Greetings everyone, welcome to another episode in this how-to series. First of all, thanks to everyone interacting with these videos. I really do hope you find them enjoyable as well as helpful. Not sure what episode this is, but today I want to finish our stage 0.5 and get to work on stage 1. Right, to achieve that, we are gonna finish our check can give item and probably give an item, and at some point we'll have a has item callback as well, and as soon as some things happen we will trigger an alert, which would basically be triggering like a dispatch call if you have a dispatch. So we'll do it in an interesting way. Okay, now let's head over to our config first and go over to our items. Okay, I want to add a second item, and our shop key we set as stage 1. Right, so maybe let's rename it to door unlock. Because then it can be anything. It doesn't have to be a key specifically, and that is a bit more descriptive than stage 1, right? Now, where did we do that? Okay, in can add item. Well, add item if can. We want to give it another variable. I want to give it c dot items dot door unlock. Right, so we are feeding it another variable, and in our server, right, I did force it to have this particular item. However, I think we should add item name, right? Because if you go to Oxlib's documentation, it'll show us exactly what I mean by it. So lib modules, callback, yes, Lua. Let's go to server. Right. Technically client first, right? Because we want the lib callback await. So it'll be the name, delay, and whatever we want to feed it, right? So we have our event name false because we don't want to delay it, and then our item type, right? Our item name. Now, in the server, when we look at callback register, we have name and callback, right? So in our function, we always have source because that's the client who triggered it. Item, which is our item name, and they take in metadata and a target as well, but we don't care about it. And I should actually take out the give status because we just return something, right? And we make this give status local. So I want to do add item if can this way so that it is more general, right? Because if we do it this way, when we get to stage 1, for example, whenever we interact on an object and add an item, we just call the exact same callback, the add item if can callback, and that'll just add the item, right? And we'll copy this every time. The reason being, and the reason why I don't just put it in a function and call the function every time, is because this function right here, the await, makes this entire event pause until given has received a value, which we want, because if we didn't have the await, it'll assign given a value or not. And if we then call this, for example, if given is technically still null and hasn't received a data type or a value, then it'll take given as null and will just return, and it won't ever trigger the heist, right? So we wanted to wait until given has a value, and then based on that we trigger whatever comes next, right? So we take in our item name, obviously we have our source, local player is whatever, and we ask if we can add an item, and we actually haven't gotten to it yet, but we will add the specific item. Right, first of all we want to do ESX. It'll probably be a server. Add inventory item, we just copy that. Right, after we checked if we can add an item, so let's do this. If can add, then we add the particular item and just call end. Actually make it else end, because if we can add an item, we add it. If we cannot, give status is false, and we return, right? We just return out of this, out of that, and we return a false. Okay. Item is just item name. And we just give them 1. Okay. So that sorts out ESX. So whenever we are able to add an item to the inventory, we add it. And we should actually do this. Give status true. And we return. Actually we can't return because we need to return an actual variable. So either we set it and then return it, or we don't return anything and just leave it, because our code is pretty finely written, so it won't be an issue if we just deleted that. Well, it shouldn't be an issue. I'm pretty sure it won't be. So let's just leave it like that. Now we just need a similar little piece of code for our QBCore. Right, back at QBCore, over to the core server functions. Right, I think we were working on the QBCore the previous episode, but we didn't get to finish it. Right, so I think I remember that because we needed to do QB inventory, because QBCore specifically works with inventory, can add item, etc. Right, with the L export. Now add item, just grab that and boom. Don't take that, we don't need that. Now, exports, QB inventory, add item source, very important, just make it src, item name, perfect, one false false, and the reason, call it iron underscore dh, dh, maybe semicolon, heist, item, I guess. For now, let's leave it like that. Let's just look at, okay, identifier, item, amount, slot, info, reason. Right, we won't have an info and we won't have a slot. Therefore, both are false. If we were to add items with metadata, then we would use that. Otherwise, it is not necessary. Okay. I think what we might need to do is do count as well. Or amount. Let's do amount and we replace all of these with amount so that we make it a very general, what do you call it? Function, callback. Right, so I want to give this a thingy, local, well, let's do this. If exports, then give status as true, else okay. Let me just double check exports, example. Right, I have seen this be used before. If we do if exports whatever, then what it should do is basically if this executes properly, then obviously we know it added the item successfully, therefore give status as true. However, if this export fails, we know that it wasn't added and we say give status as false. And we could do something similar for ESX, and instead of our export here, we try to do that because it'll still call this function. It'll still trigger the function. We just put it in an if statement. So we like just if calling that function is successful, then give status as true. Otherwise it is false, right? And that is just to make sure we give the things the correct things. We don't ever use player in this case, so that isn't necessary. Right, for ESX, we could do it this way, but whenever we have QB, at some point we'll have to do, what do you call it? Not framework checks, but inventory checks. So if you are coding along QBCore, then we will probably do something like if, for example, if c dot inventory is equal to, for example, QB, then end. So if we set our config.inventory to QB, we'll use this code, else I'm just gonna straight up copy that, end. Right, else if the inventory, for example, is QS, then we will go over here and add our Quasar inventory export, right? Right, how come missed symbol if? Why? If the framework is QBCore, right, hold up. Else if then else end. If then. If can add, probably the issue over here. Maybe. It's that if, my bad. Anyway, so we'll just have the quasar inventories add item and can give item checks over here. Right. Which you can get on the quasar docs. Yo, my spelling is horrendous. Quasar store documentation. Okay. Haven't really gotten to everything, but we have the can give item. We've finished that. Okay. What I do want to do is the following. I just want to check QBCore. Do we have a dispatch? I know co-design has a dispatch. Right. So documentation. I know my server uses this dispatch, so what I want to do is I want to go to the documentation, please. I've clicked it like 10 times, bro. Okay. Quasar inventory, get item list, get weapon list, get inventory, add item. So we'll have source, item name, and not count but amount. Right. So that is that for add item, remove item. We'll also have a remove item. Get stash items. Get inventory, set weapon wheel, get current weapon, search. Yeah. Maybe do you can add. Yeah, there's just an add item. And a remove item. Let's see, let's go to the previous one just really quick. Remove. That's a remove item. Add items with native inventory export. Add item, give item. Give item to player. Right. This is probably a better one to call instead of add item. So let's do that just because. And I'm not sure about the add item yet, but I don't want to waste too much time. Right, I want to get to what we need to get to. Right, over here, dispatcher, let's see, dispatch, configs locales, resource integration, get player info, no, I just want to trigger things. QB police. Ugh. Hold up. Right, we would need this. Technically, let's see, trigger server event. Okay, so there's usually a server event. I just wanted to check. I don't want to lie, you know. So we'll go over here in our SV customize, because that shouldn't be locked. If you were to escrow it, we would register a server event, right? And we'll call it iron underscore dh semicolon server, because it's a server event. And we'll call it trigger. What do we call it? Let's paste that for an inspiration. Trigger notification. Let's call it trigger notify. And we would do what? Add event handler. And you just copy that name, copy and paste, comma, function, end. It won't ever have a callback, so we just leave it as an event and we paste that in here. So as a note, we just do this, add your dispatch event here. And maybe we take in title and message. Let's see. Okay, okie dokie. I'm just using that as inspiration. Usually they have export, events, server side, dispatch, get player dispatch data, get config, no, get player info. Okay. Right. So this makes sense now. So technically this is a client-side export. Right. Okay. Right, so it means that we have a trigger heist, but I'm just going to paste that over here. I'm going to copy this so that we can register a client event and trigger a notification. Let's just write it out. Trigger notification. Right. And we'll do local data is right. Let me just check what data it grabs. Right. Data.coordinates is the coordinates of the player. The sex of the player, the location, the street address of them, data.unique ID. Right, so alternatively, instead of adding that here we go to client customize and we drop it here. Right, and not server, but we can delete that then. In our client customize, we just do that. Right, then add your custom dispatch info here. Okay, then I'm gonna head to QB police. Just real quick and see what exports they have. Radars, evidence, objects, locations, introduction, config locations. Right. That doesn't matter right now. Right. Let's just get that saved. And I want to go over here. I want to copy events. Just paste it there. So that is sorted. Now, we want to do what? Trigger heist. Okay, the heist is triggered when the heist is completed. Okie dokie, heist termination. Threads. Right. Exports. Okie dokie. And on resource stop. We're just doing a bunch of coding this episode. No testing really, because we'll do testing later on. I want to go to Oxlib and look at their zones. Right. Zones, shared, polyzone, zone box. There's an on enter, spheres, and then other things. Okay, I just looked at it because QRST target. QB target allows you to add a little box zone on which you can interact, like this little guy. And for our specific MLO, that would work perfectly because you can just put a box around the thing. Alternatively, you can add target models, or like add a target model like this and just use the models of the little phones, so you can kind of interact with the little phones. However, I'm not sure if that'll work because I do believe that it's custom models specific to the script. So that could possibly be something that works. I don't know. But let's assume we have like a little target thing. We might have a function that gets called whenever someone interacts with a certain object. So we'll call it a local function and possibly like steal object. And maybe we call a name, like an item name, so that in that function we do this. We just copy and paste it, right? If not given, then return false end, otherwise we return true. Just very simple. Right, so local given, not that, but item name. So I know it is also very general, but let's say we interact with this little object with our third eye. We call this function steal object for that name. So specifically on the phones, we'll interact with it. We'll call the function steal object like phone or whatever, and it'll add us a phone. Let us not forget that we have to take in an amount as well, right? On that note, we go to amount, and we'll probably just do 1 here as a default. Yeah. I mean, we'll probably have to do something like this. Name and amount. So that for the door unlock, we give them a shop key of 1. However, every time we do this, we have to do this dot name, right? Because we changed the structure of our table. So door unlock dot name, which would be shop key. So we give it a shop key, right? It is a door unlock thing that we give it, and I believe we set it as count. It is amount, not count. Right. So we basically just go into door lock and we tell it, config.items.door_unlock.amount is 1, and that is what we've done right there. Right. So every time we interact, we will send this function the item name and amount, which we will obviously always register in this little table, and give it the item name and amount, and it'll obviously return a boolean value, so we could have like a check in our little event or trigger. And yeah, basically then whenever they interact, we do that. There's something else we can do whenever we interact. Local minigame, no, not a function, but CL customize. We do I'm just gonna copy that like that. Paste in with a thingy. Not trigger notification, but trigger minigame. And this is wrong. Why? Because we need to register a callback. And we'll get to that in our next episode. Right. We've actually done quite a lot. We have triggered our alert, which is trigger notification. So any server owner can just rearrange and change that as they wish. And we still have to trigger this event in our script, but we'll get to that because that is a stage 1 type of thing. And yeah, next episode I believe we will look at has item, and then we'll check if the player has an item, for example, to interact with the phones, to actually steal it, if you know what I mean. But yeah, that should be that for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you need any support, the Discord of imagiNix Studios is linked below. Come find me there. We have a dedicated forum chat precisely for that purpose. And I think that's that. So thank you for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.